Uganda is playing host to over 1,120,000 refugees. Majority of these refugees are South Sudanese, who form over 700,000 persons. About 86% are women and children. We have other nationalities. We have the Congolese, who are coming in now also. We have Burundians, we have Ethiopians, we have Eritreans, Rwandans, and these compose the big number of refugees which comes to about 1,120,000 as of end of March. These are spread within the settlements in West Nile and in the southwest regions of Uganda. We equally have urban refugees, and this is a reflection of the changing profile of refugees that are coming into the country. Men are looking for skilled employment, and these form about coming close to 90,000 refugees that are in urban areas, in the various urban areas. And these too need protection and management in the areas where they are. Uganda's refugee management is protected or is guided by the Refugee Act, which is a domestication of the UN Convention related to protection of refugees. And what makes Uganda tick is majorly the settlement approach, which entails giving land to the refugees so that they're able to produce food by themselves and they become food self-sufficient after a short period of stay. Number two, we have the free movement of persons, including refugees, and of course also the access to employment the refugees enjoy while in asylum. And this access to employment enables them to get a living, but what is important is that their charges for employment or permits are waived for the refugees. So they are able to get access to employment like any other national in similar circumstances. We've computed the total requirement of the interventions that are required for refugee protection and management in the country. And for this year alone, it's $850 million that are required by the various agencies. UNHCR has it at about $250 million for the UNHCR component. But we have World Food Program, which has to feed these people. There are various agencies, UNICEF, UNDP, UN Women, all intervening in the refugee setting that we have, and their various requirements put together comes to about $850 million. Now, the met need or the met bit of it that is available is only 15%, which is quite a meager funding for the situation which is being applauded as being the best place to be a refugee. If you compare this to Turkey, for example, which has 2 million refugees, the European Union has put in place 3 billion euros to meet their requirement. You have 1.12 million persons, and you are only funding 15% of the $850 million requirement. I think it's a shame, and we need to pull up our socks, and as an international community, we put resources in place to fund the protection regime in Uganda. In the protection regime in the country, the Office of the Prime Minister, which is an arm of government, leads the coordination and monitoring of refugee affairs intervention. The government of Uganda makes available the land on which the refugees live and gain a livelihood. A rough computation of how much this could be, because we are now trying to get a scientific arrival to the figure that this could be. But you just imagine if you divided the 1,120,000 persons by 5, that's the average household members around this region, you get what you would say that is made available to refugees in terms of, say, rental for land is over 50 million US dollars annually. On top of this, the refugee children are entitled to free primary education, universal primary education, like the nationals. We share the same services with the refugees and infrastructure, which is also a cost to government. You cannot put a money value on the peace and security they enjoy while here. And we've had refugees policing and police deployed amongst the refugee settlements. You compute the impact on the environment in terms of the vegetation cover that the refugees have occasioned onto the areas where they've been settled. Is some enormous impact. But we are working together with UNDP to put together a scientifically arrived at figure of what government contribution is. But certainly the biggest contributor to this humanitarian response, is the government of Uganda. Where we've had refugees hosted, we've seen economic transformation of these areas. The refugee population alone being occasioned in a place means that there is demand for more goods and services in these areas. And this has increased the trade base in these areas that have hosted refugees. We've had refugees coming in with expertise, and we've seen a number of them being employed in the hospitality industry. We've seen schools, roads, and health centers that have been constructed in areas that are hosting refugees. And some of these areas were previously hard to reach, but when you get to them now, the dynamics there in terms of health service delivery, education infrastructure, roads, water, and sanitation services, there's been a tremendous improvement. Areas like Changwali, Kiriandongo are food baskets for the Ugandan food market because of the productivity there, the agriculture that the refugees are engaged in. They've produced a lot of food that goes onto the market. Of course, it also puts the entire Uganda in good light in that we are respecting the human rights situation that is we have to respect in terms of offering refuge to those who are running away from persecution and offering asylum. We are not closing our borders, and we are doing a good act for humanity in terms of protecting our brothers in need. And what we are saying is that we are not looking at refugees with pity. Yes, we pity them because they've run away from their home areas, but we want to look at the migration dividend that comes out of hosting refugees, or migrants for that matter. And if you went to various areas, and specifically here I can talk about the United States, most of the Silicon Valley guys who are really migrants to that place. More innovations that have been done there has been by migrants. You talk about Google, you talk about space innovations, you talk about computer, even scientific innovations. A number of them have been migrants. So we need to turn around the refugees while they're in asylum, help them get skills, help them have a good life, let them regain their dignity, contribute to the economy which is hosting them, and on return, they become better citizens and even probably take over leadership positions in their countries, like some of the refugees that have been here, repatriated back home, and they've ended up taking leadership in their countries, and they've changed the dynamics in those areas. Some of the eminent persons that should be able to give hope to those persons who are in refugehood. Because anybody could be a refugee, but we have eminent persons who have excelled and eminent. Like I'm saying, I talk about Albert Einstein was a refugee, Madeleine Albright, a refugee. The current president of Somalia was a refugee. The current president of Rwanda was a refugee in Uganda. Gambia person was a refugee. The president of Uganda himself, the family was in refugehood in Sweden. Our current prime minister got a scholarship for his doctoral studies from UNHCR, and he proudly talks about it. In Boston, Minnesota, there is a woman, a lady MP from Somalia, and there are so many people to talk about. But these examples should be a source of inspiration for refugees not to lose hope. And I think they are worthless persons, but they can be able to become prominent and contribute to economic transformation of not only themselves, but the host countries where they are, and on repatriation of their countries. My particular message is that we are calling onto the international community to look at the countries hosting refugees. Please meet your obligations as required in the spirit of burden sharing and support countries that have opened up their doors, not closed them, not closed out refugees, and support and invest into the refugee protection regimes in these countries. I'm Kazungu David Apollo, Commissioner for Refugees, Office of the Prime Minister in the Government of Uganda. I stand for refugees.